Hey everyone, welcome back. So in the previous video, we analyzed the layers involved in tattoo therapy and why it's popping up at the moment. What is therapy? What is tattooing? And how do healing arts and body art intermingle? Okay, so now we're going to look at how people might engage with tattooing in a therapeutic way and what might come up, what to expect. I'm going to give you my insights into things that I've personally experienced and taken people through so you can see what all of these different aspects are that are being considered as tattoo therapy these days. There's a whole bunch of different ways and processes that are being curated and sort of offered and put out into the world. And so we're going to take a moment and really look at and try and discern between them which ones are appropriate, which ones are applicable, which ones make sense, like which ones are effective and ineffective. At Tattoo Pathway, we say, is the tattoo process something that's generative or regenerative? Are you on a path of betterment as a result of the tattoo? Or is it degenerative? Is it actually something that's going to drive issues deeper or deteriorate some aspects of yourself or continue to validate a story that isn't real, that isn't offering any substance to the person? And so there's these distinct ways of viewing tattooing and therapy that we talked about in the first video that I want to rehash here. We have like a superficial engagement, something that's on the surface, and then something that's more substantial, it's deeper. It requires more time to get there. You actually have to move away from the surface thinking, the surface participation, and arrive somewhere that's more of an undercurrent, what it's actually about. It requires more intention and more attention. So I call the surface level of tattooing or the contemporary tattoo culture and industry the Just Tattoo Club. That's all it's about. It's just tattooing. It's kind of meaningless. It's fun. It's just art. It's about instant gratification. And it's usually just about reinforcing who you are and reinforcing your story. On the other hand, Tattoo Pathway is about more than tattooing. It's about long term satisfaction and integration. It's about revealing and restoring who you are. And it's about the big picture. It's not about some momentary experience. And you can see why that distinction is really important to bring into our analysis of the proposed tattoo therapy that you could experience. So, some of the ways people engage with tattooing currently that is quote unquote therapeutic would be a memorial tattoo or a tattoo to remember someone and to help their grieving process. In this particular situation, it's really important to think about the stage in the grieving process that you're in. Take some time to think about where you're at. And potentially, if you're going to get a tattoo to remember someone, do it on the other end of your grieving process, not in the grieving process itself. Because if we think about it, tattoos are something that capture a moment or a feeling or a piece of information in time and allow the wearer to carry it with them. So, what is it that you're carrying through? What is it reminding you of? What's it holding on to? And if that's a process of grief, of something where there's deep loss, deep sadness, you have to ask yourself, is that actually something that you want to carry into the future? A grieving process is usually something that you want to go through and feel and find resolve on so that you can move forward and move away from that point in time that contains the hurt and the loss. So you're getting a tattoo that's going to be like a tombstone, something that's really heavy. It's significant, sure. It reminds you of something, sure. But it's like, do you want to carry that tombstone with you all day, every day, into every situation, into every room? Maybe there'll be something that's more appropriate to allow you to remember your loved one and your lost one. Something that you might be able to take off or put down or that resides in a certain part of the house. A little piece of wisdom that's relevant here that I've heard from someone who is a therapist is not to make long term decisions, which a tattoo is, in short term emotional states, which grief is. Love, loss, all of these emotive experiences of the heart, are something that you should definitely put time between if you're correlating them to a tattoo. That piece of information also comes into play or consideration when we think about cover ups. So a lot of people have tattoos that they no longer feel comfortable with. It doesn't align with who they are anymore, might misrepresent them. This is something that we refer to at Tattoo Pathway as post tattoo identity disorder, PTID. So you're wearing a tattoo, you regret that you got it, you don't feel good about it anymore. It might be in direct conflict with who you actually are, and people are perceiving that, or it's reminding you of something that no longer feels good. And so you go to get a cover up. Again, there's a feeling of dislike, of uneasiness. You're feeling uncomfortable, unsatisfied. You don't go and make a long term decision, which would be another tattoo over the top from this emotional place. You need to give it some well rounded consideration, potentially unpacking it with someone like a therapist, you know, or your tattooist can play this role if there's someone who's got the capacity to listen and really understand what it is that you're doing. And so this therapeutic approach of reworking or covering or changing a tattoo that doesn't feel right, I think is a valid therapeutic layer of tattooing. It also moves us into the field of reclaiming the body or reclaiming the story, which covers a couple of other areas as well. There's the reclaiming the body after surgery, post surgery, having part of the body removed and there being a scar, or scars that are self inflicted during a stage of self harming or navigating some type of mental unease. So, tattooing can be effective therapeutically in allowing someone to restore, reclaim, and rewrite parts of their story that aren't well fitted to who they currently are. It's really important how this is done and how it's approached, because, like we said earlier, the tattoo can be effective or ineffective. And a tattoo that hasn't been fully thought out and is done for one of these reasons can drive the issue further into the person. It can reinforce the story even more. So, like, if you want to cover a scar or you want to cover an old tattoo, and you're coming from a place of, I really hate how it looks. It doesn't feel good. I want to cover it. I don't want to see it anymore. I don't want other people to be able to see it. And the story and the motivation behind your next action is coming from that place. You're just going to reinforce it. You're probably just going to re experience the same pattern, the same feelings in response to the next tattoo. I've seen this time and time again. So it's really important when we move into a space of covering, changing, lasering, working over scars, that we give the adequate time to the process of reflecting and contemplating and understanding what it is that led us to that place initially, to get the tattoo we don't like, to get the scars, to need to go through the surgery, and to acknowledge it, to honor it a little bit, to accept it, so that we can do the next layer of the process. We can get the new tattoo from a place that is sure about who we are and appreciative of where we've been and its role in getting us here. And more importantly, that we're actually taking aim for and setting our sights on the future, not on the past. An analogy of how this could go wrong would be like, I really don't like this tattoo or this scar. I want to try and hide it. And if you were to go in with that intention, it's like wrapping something that you want to break down in plastic before you bury it. It's just going to be buried deeper under the surface, but remain there unchanged. And so you'll know that it's there. Whereas if you go into a process of acknowledging what it is, and you dig a hole for it, and you put it in there, and you say, thanks for everything that's been of value, and you bury it, it's probably going to break down and decompose and offer sustenance and nutrients for whatever it is that's going to come next. We can also look at art therapy and narrative therapy. These are two pre-existing therapeutic modalities that people use that have obvious correlations to tattooing. We're doing art, we're doing drawings on the skin, we're rendering physical artwork onto people's bodies. And narrative therapy, I say that every tattoo is the story of a person's journey through their life, which which entails narrative, but also entails navigation. So, art therapy and narrative therapy, even though there's obvious overlaps, it's important to understand they're things that should probably be undertaken paralleling your tattoo process in conjunction. There's lots of therapeutic modalities that, if they're done in conjunction, in partnership with a tattoo, and the person that's doing the tattoo for you understands the processes you're in, they can be very beneficial. It's art therapy and tattooing don't really overlap and become the same thing. I don't think many art therapists would suggest the explorative and expressive nature of art therapy to actually be carried out on the skin. I could be wrong. I'm happy to talk to anyone about that and, revisit where I stand. But currently, I think that these activities should be carried out side by side. And so that the art therapy, the narrative therapy might be something that comes in and informs a tattoo process, but doesn't necessarily play out when you're getting tattooed. It seems like something that exists in a moment of time and shouldn't be captured and carried into the future. Tattooing as a form of self expression and self acceptance is also very valid. Kind of like the cover up thing, you just need to look at the intention, you need to look at what's driving the whole process and make sure that it's sound and that it's real, that it's true, that it's good. There is the proclivity for people to fall into almost a type of fantasy when it comes to tattooing. This self idealization. So I think in terms of self expression and self acceptance, if we look at the broader concept of identity, of who it is that we are, who it is that we think we are, how who we are fits within our cultural context, where we live, our community, and then where we exist in like a bigger cosmology. All of these things can come into tattooing and be extremely beneficial in placing someone adequately so that their life has meaning, their identity feels well fitted, and they have purpose and place and belonging. It's always had that place in all cultures through time. There's a lot of cultural repair that's taking place because so many cultures are taking tattooing back and reintegrating it and reviving their traditional tattoo cultures. So, as a global Western culture where the tattoo industry and the contemporary tattoo culture exists and the pop tattoo cult exists, there's definitely a place for us to have a healthy relationship with our tattoos and our identity. But we just really need to be screening it, combing it, and making sure that what we're doing is rational and it's not some irrational story or some form of self soothing or validation that ultimately, as we grow and change and mature through time, again, renders an experience that doesn't feel right. We don't want to end up in that place where we have post tattoo identity disorder. Hopefully that was useful. You can subscribe to this channel if you want to stay in the loop with our content. Also, if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments below. I'm happy to engage with people there. The next thing we're going to look at is what you might experience as a result of being tattooed with a therapeutic mindset and the potential of the pain.